Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sahrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha Pultitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you everybody for coming. So today we'll be reading Bhagavad Gita as it is from chapter 16, text number 11. Chapter 16, text 11. So we'll chant the Sanskrit and then the English translation in unison. Okay. Everybody ready? Here we go. Chintyam aparimeyam cha pralayantam upashritaha kamo paboga parama etavad iti nishchitaha asha pasha shatarvadha kama krodha parayanaha ihante kama bogartam anyayenartha sanchayan. Translation. They believe that to gratify the senses unto the end of life is the prime necessity of human civilization. Thus, there is no end to their anxiety. Being bound by hundreds and thousands of desires, by anger and lust, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification. Text 13 through 15. Idam ada maya labdham imam prapsye manoratam idam astidam api me bhavishyati punardhanam aso maya hato shatrur hanishye chaparanapi ishvaroham aham bhogi siddhoham balavan sukhi Adhyo bijannavanasmi konyosti sadrisho maya yakshe dasyami modishya ityagyana vimohitaha. Translation. The demoniac person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future, more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him, and my other enemy will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man, surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. Text 16. Anekachita vibranta mohajala samavrataha prasakta kama bhogeshu patanti narake shucho. Translation. Thus perplexed by various anxieties and bound by a network of illusions, one becomes too strongly attached to sense enjoyment and falls down into hell. Text 17. Atma sambhavita stabdha dhanamana madanvitaha yajante nama yagyaiste dambhena vidipurvakam. Translation. Self-complacent and always impudent, deluded by wealth and false prestige, they sometimes perform sacrifices in name only, without following any rules or regulations. Text 18. Ahangaram balam darpam kamam krodham cha samshritaha mamatma paradeheshu pradvishanto bhavasyu Vyasuyakaha. Translation. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, the demon becomes envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in his own body and in the bodies of others, and blasphemes against the real religion. Text 19. A little higher. Tanaham dvishita kruran samsareshu naradhaman kshipam yajasram ashubhan asurishveva yonishu. Translation. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, are cast by me into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. Text 20. Asurim yonimapana murha janmani janmani mama praipyaiva kunteya tato yandya dhamam gatim. Translation. Attaining repeated birth amongst the species of demoniac life, such persons can never approach me. Gradually they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. And finally, text 21. Trividham narakasyedam dvaram nashanam atmanaha kama krodhastata lobhas tasmare tatrayam tyajet. Translation. There are three gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. Thank you very much. Nice chanting. So now we'll go back to text 11 through 12. We'll read the purport and the translation and purport. They believe that to gratify the senses, so this is chapter 16, text 11. They believe that to gratify the senses unto the end of life is the prime necessity of human civilization. Thus, there is no end to their anxiety. Being bound by hundreds and thousands of desires, by lust and anger, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification. Report. The demoniac accept that the enjoyment of the senses is the ultimate goal of life, and this concept they maintain until death. They do not believe in life after death, and they do not believe that one takes on different types of bodies according to one's karma or activities in this world. Their plans for life are never finished, and they go on preparing plan after plan, all of which are never finished. We have personal experience of a person of such demoniac mentality who, even at the point of death, was requesting the physician to prolong his life for 4 years more because his plans were not yet complete. Such foolish people do not know that a physician cannot prolong life even for a moment. When the notice is there, there is no consideration of the man's desire. The laws of nature do not allow a second beyond what one is destined to enjoy. The demoniac person who has no faith in God or the supersoul within himself performs all kinds of sinful activities simply for sense gratification. He does not know that there is a witness sitting within his heart. The supersoul is observing the activities of the individual soul. As it is stated in the Vedic literature, the Upanishads, there are two birds sitting in one tree. The one is acting and enjoying or suffering the fruits of the branches, and the other is witnessing. But one who is demoniac, who has no knowledge of Vedic scripture, nor has he any faith. Therefore, he feels free to do anything for sense enjoyment, regardless of the consequences. So, devotees, thank you for being here. Please be kind enough to pray to their lordships and Srila Prabhupada that we may have conversation which enlivens us spiritually and brings us to further understanding of these words from the acharyas. So I thought that there was a few points here that I would touch on. Prabhupada starts this point. He starts the purport discussing how there are certain people, the demoniac, which their ultimate goal of life is different than the spiritualists. So those who are interested in spiritual life, or which are the topmost spiritualists, the topmost yogis, yoginam api sarvesham, out of all the yogis, the topmost yogi is the one who always performs a service to the Lord. That's his opinion. He states in the 7th chapter. So, but in contrast to those persons whose ultimate goal of life is prema, prema maharta mahan, attaining pure love for God is the highest goal of life, which love is active, as you know better than me that when we love somebody, then there's so many activities that go along with that, right? So Prabhupada would often describe, he would use this phrase, bhakti. Bhakti is translated as loving devotional service, which is an active thing, you know. So we take that, Prabhupada would take that word and he will make sure that we got the full essence. It's an active process. It's a dynamic process. So the bhakti yogis take prema, love for God, as the highest goal. And the demoniac take what? Sense gratification. So this is interesting because in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Das Kaviraj, he makes a distinction that giving sense gratification to who is the difference between kama and prema, right? You know the verse? Almost. Your next one. There's that other one where you learned about the everyone being Krishna's servant. Yeah. it sounds good when you chant the Bengali. So, yeah. So, but there's kama and there's prema. Kama and prema. So the difference is whose senses are we satisfying? Yeah. We want to satisfy Krishna's. So the goal of the bhakti yogis is let us give all the pleasure to Krishna's senses. That's the ultimate goal of my life, is to give pleasure to Krishna's senses and to relish that activity. Whereas the materialistic persons who are described by Krishna himself as the demoniac, right? These are the demoniac. And the asuras, right? These persons have taken shelter of sense gratification. So they relish when an object contacts the organ of, perception, which matches. That's their highest business, is to give pleasure to the body. So such activities are described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that this type of activity is the subject matter for the crows. So the crows have a certain nature, which is that they like trash and dirty places and things like that. Of course, they also have some good qualities by Krishna's grace. One good quality about the crow is that they find one mate for life, right? As it should be for the human society also in this Kali Yuga, you know? That is something we can appreciate about them. And they don't do any PDA, or they don't do any procreation in public. They go to a very secluded place in the forest where nobody is, then right. So these are some things that we can learn from them. But in general, the scripture describes, and actually Narada Muni touches base on this point. Narada Muni is meeting with Vyasadeva in the first canto of Bhagavatam, and Vyasadeva is despondent. Despondent is a term which basically means it's like he's morose. For whatever reason, he's not completely satisfied. And after Vyasadeva kind of addresses Narada Muni and tells him, hey, I did all these things, I wrote all these books, and I'm still not even satisfied. Then Narada Muni doesn't delay. Right away, he says, you are not satisfied because you did not directly glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he elaborates and he says, instead, you spend a lot of time, glorifying all these other things, which are the four different principles of human society, which are dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, right? From dharma, then you get a little wealth, right? From the demigods and things like that. Then you do sense gratification. And when you get tired of sense gratification and your artha runs out, then you want moksha. So, but transcendental devotional service is above all those things. And in that same section, Narada Muni starts discussing that the literatures which describe, or the literatures which fail to glorify the personality of Godhead, they're like a pilgrimage place to the crows. So the liberated persons who are the sadhava, it's called sadhava, the saints and the sages, these holy people their abode, their residence is the transcendental world. So what do they have to do with these pilgrimage place for the crows? They have a way better atmosphere to, to enjoy, to relish. Right. So the crows. So in that purport, in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada describes how the pleasure of basically that this type I don't think it's that one. The next verse he speaks about the swans. So there's the crows and then there's the swans, hamsas, right? So these devotees, they're different. They're in completely in different category. And then Narada Muni says, he makes a really cool point where he says, they um, even mental speculation, dry philosophical speculation, even about the absolute truth does not look well if it is devoid of the conception of the supreme personality of Godhead. That's how Prabhupada writes the poetry there. It does not look well. It's kind of like, it's a kind of a sophisticated, you know, criticism. It does not look well, it's kind of high class. But that's what he says. And then that's he that's the translation which Prabhupada gives to the verse. And then it says, Narada Muni is describing. Then what to speak? If that doesn't look well, if it's devoid of the conception of that, this knowledge of the absolute person, what's to say of this fruitive activity, which is always, you know, what is he? How does he write it? Basically, he describes how it's troublesome from the very beginning, and it's temporary anyway. It's transient, the fruitive activity, right? So in that purport, Prabhupada mentions this comment from Sridhar Swami, where he says that the that type of pleasure, that fruitive pleasure, which is just trouble actually from the beginning, and it's a transient anyway. It's like the pleasure for the prostitute hunter, you know? And actually, such persons are like dolls of the material energy. They're just being whipped around and controlled by the material energy. So this is the interesting situation of the persons who Krishna calls the demons. Persons who are influenced by the demoniac mentality, they're slaves to the sense gratification, which is available to the hogs and dogs. So they go on doing the sense gratification and they become very proud by their acquisitions. And they think, I am the doer. That's discussed here too, but was also discussed in the 13th chapter that they think that they're the doer. Kartaham iti manyate. Manyate means they're thinking. Being under the control of material nature, right? They're thinking they're the doer of their activities. I'm bringing in the money. I'm making the result. I'm getting the position. I'm the cause of it. Where in actuality, it's described that what we get in this world is according to our karma, and it comes and goes by the Lord's will, you know, and that it's not up to us. And this is very interesting because one can see, well, I have to work so hard. You're telling me that I'm working so hard, and you're telling me that it's not even up to me. I didn't do that work. I didn't get the promotion. I made my business. I was I was the one. I was up at midnight doing the paperwork and making that happen. Well, according to Bhagavad Gita, we're under the modes of nature. So these things are actually unfolding. They're actually outside of our control. We're just working according to our nature. So there's some passion, there's some ignorance, there's some goodness that's mixed in there, and it's forcing us to act. Only when we engage that hard work in Krishna's service is it actually freedom, you know? Um, Unless it's in Krishna's service, there's no freedom there. It's all by force. Now one can say, well, I also have to be forced under Krishna's control too, you know? Well, there's a wonderful statement that Prabhupada gives. I was also reading in the fifth chapter, first canto, where he describes that constitutionally, we, the individual living beings, are eternal servants to this eternal master. Just as Radha Damodar was quoting, we're all servants of him. And it's constitutionally so. It doesn't change, right? Now you can say, well, why is reality like that? Prabhupada follows that statement up by another sentence where he describes that he expanded himself into all the living beings in order to enjoy service and vice versa, and to give service. And actually, that's the only way that we'll be happy. That's how he gets happiness too. Bhakti, you know, service, devotion. He's waiting to serve his devotees, you know, he's begging them to engage in this wonderful transcendental activity of love and service. So this is the only way we'll be happy. So different times we can discuss, you know. So this is the outlook, or this is the version of the Vedas. This is the version of the scriptures where it says that all the living entities are eternally his servants. And those who want to buy into that reality, right? One can say, that's just an artificial imposition upon the mind. You're 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 just like the rest of the groups who are adopting some favorable philosophy to, you know, give you some peace and satisfaction and some peace of mind that there's some organization happening, there's some system, you know, but actually it doesn't exist. This is the philosophy that the demoniac people try to convince us of, and this is right here, right? They think that to gratify the senses, what is the end result of that philosophical train of thought? Okay, this Hare Krishna, this Christian, this Muslim, this that, it's all just some bogus hocus pocus thing. They just humans concocted it. Humans made it, you know? So I make my own religion, cutthroat. Prabhupada uses that phrase. That's what I think my religion is, cutthroat. You think it's a good religion? No. So this is the thing. Religion is made by God, right? Dharma Susakshat Bhagavat Pranitam. We can't make the God. Religion, we can't make religion. Religion is enunciated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is disseminated through the Vedas. It's uh it's upheld by the Mahajanas, or the spiritual masters, and it's practiced, it's followed faithfully and enthusiastically by the sadhus. So the demons will always try to convince us Why? Because of this. As soon as I accept that there's a master, right? My so-called illusion of grandeur that I am the master is a finito, finished. And because I'm materially contaminated, I think that a master is displeasing to my senses. Because I'm materially contaminated, I don't have a conception of a master who serves my senses better than I could. I never met such a master. I never seen such a master. But that's the reality. That's actually the version of the scripture. Rishikesh is the master of the senses, and he's way better at satisfying your senses than you are. Or rather, intelligence is contaminated. Lusty intelligence says, satisfy the senses. That's perfection of life. That's somebody who's under the demoniac nature. And their intelligence is always convincing them in that way. And the mind is again and again saying yes, right? Saying yes to those sense objects uh, and no to others. And Krishna describes how if they don't have faith, right, then he gets some ideas, he gets perplexed by various anxieties and bound by a network of illusions. One becomes too strongly attached to sense enjoyment and falls down into hell. So this is tough because human life is a life of responsibility. And so whenever the mind keeps saying yes to sense gratification, everything devoid of Krishna consciousness, we say yes to, right? And we say no to the holy name, Mahaprasadam, the saints, the scriptures, right? Mahaprasada Govinde, right? That prayer describes they never have faith, right? They never get any faith because they're too sinful. They keep saying yes to all those things which God has actually forbidden for the human society. Now that's tough because that's a misuse of one's own free will. But what happens, what's very tricky is that one becomes perplexed and it becomes very entangling. Once you drink an entire bottle of liquor, you're drunk. You can't Your decision making process has actually been inhibited for a certain period of time. You can't go back from that, you know? So when we do a sinful activity like that, whatever it may be, we are getting drunk. We're inhibiting ourselves, and then we have to ride it out. And we may make so many more bad decisions, which we are actually become responsible for too. That's tough. So what's interesting though is that I think that I can actually sacrifice everybody else's uh, pleasure for my own pleasure. I can actually abuse others and objectify them and uh, manipulate or uh, take advantage of them. And this is the whole problem: is that when I'm into the material consciousness, right? So much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. And I have so much now, and I will get more of it. I'll get more power, more wealth, more women, more followers, more fame. He is my enemy, right? Enemies. Now I have enemies and friends. This is the whole business. Prahlad Maharaj was trying to convince his father and his schoolmates that this whole business of enemies and friends, this is a waste of human consciousness. If I spend my whole life trying to work on that platform, I waste my life, you know? So I have to take up bhakti yoga, which goes beyond all that, right? So the demoniac person is thinking that he can take advantage of other people, and he believes in his own strength, his own power. He has false pride. False pride means real pride. Real pride is like this. Wow. Krishna, the Vaishnava acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, they're so kind. They're so merciful. They're so powerful. By one glance, they can purify, you know, by eating the Mahaprasad offered to, which is food offered to the deity, one can become free from all contamination. By drinking the Charnamrita, there's so many glories. By seeing the deity and during the arti, you know, so many wonderful glories of Krishna and the devotees, and to be absorbed in appreciation and to be proud to be allowed to have that association with such great souls. That's real pride. Wow, they've allowed me to enter their family. They've invited me to their home. You know, I'm proud to go and spread their glories everywhere I go. I'm proud to be connected to this sampradaya because they're the most merciful. Brahma and all his servants, all his all his family are all engaged in delivering the fallen souls. What a family to be part of. And materialistic consciousness, it seems very similar, but it's all focused on the body. And there's a false pride, meaning that I think I am this body, whatever glories this body has, I misidentify with my own self and my own glories. When actually I'm not this body, I've been given this body by my karmic lot, and in due course I'll be finished with this body. So therefore it's false pride, whereas that real pride is eternal. I'm eternally part of this sampradaya. I'm eternally a servant of Krishna. I'm eternally Prabhupada's humble foot soldier in this transcendental army. You know, that's my real identity. So to be proud of that is actually spiritual, right? And actually, that type of spiritual pride is is harmonious with humility. Actually, I'm saying I am servant. I am the servant of such great persons, and then I act like it. That's real humility, you know? They are so strong. They can give an instruction and they can empower such a fallen soul like me to actually do it. That's their strength. So Krishna consciousness is about giving credit to Krishna, whereas the demon always gives the credit to himself. So I kind of went on and on. There's some problems with this type of mentality, and Lord Chaitanya and his associates have come to eradicate this mentality in my lowly self and the rest of us in this Kali Yuga, and we can humbly try to take up their simply blissful process of chanting, dancing, and feasting, hearing the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, glorifying the Lord through the Srimad Bhagavatam, and engaging in practical services 24 hours a day. Then we can become purified and we can be fully satisfied. So thank you. Hare Krishna. Anybody? Okay. Jagannath was first, and then Radha Damodar.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Um, I'm wondering why isn't sense gratification good if it feels good?
Why is it not good?
Why is it not good if it feels good?
Hmm. Well, there's a camel. The camel likes to chew thorns because it tastes good, but it hurts him. So it's not good, right? That's sense gratification. Feels good, it's not good. So it's just ignorance. We're covered by ignorance. What is actually bad for us feels good. What's actually good for us? Oh, Hare Krishna? No way. You know? That's called jaundice. That's disease, the disease of ignorance. Radha Damodar Prabhu?
I like the point that you stated that you read in the Bhagavatam, where Prabhupada says that the Lord expanded himself into the jivas for the sake of pleasure, expanding the pleasure so that they could be engaging in, the jivas can serve the Lord and the Lord can serve them. And that's a blissful reality. And that's like Vaikuntha, that's a spiritual world, it's like perfect. But I guess what's always looming in the back of my mind, and I've mentioned it before, and you've heard so many times from me, you know, that like it, in this perfect reality, because like Prabhupada often uses the analogy of, it's not even an analogy, it's a fact. The material world is like a correctional facility for the living entities who misuse their free will. But that analogy makes it sound like there's room, or there's a problem, there's a crime problem in Vaikuntha, you know, that like in Vaikuntha there's criminal behaviors so that the Lord has to open up a prison, you know. But that doesn't really make sense to me, because where is there room in the spiritual world or in the absolute reality for the living entity to misuse his free will? Because the living entities in Vaikuntha, they have free will. They're not devoid of free will. They're engaging their free will in serving Krishna, And so and I guess it's inconceivable, but like, where is there room, or where is there space in the spiritual world for criminal activity, so that then there has to be a different arrangement made in which the living entity comes here and he takes birth as like a worm, And it's so I guess what I'm at, yeah.
Well, first step, he takes birth as Brahman, right? So it's very subtle. Doesn't have any sinful desires there. It's very subtle. So it's like I've heard it described as just a very, it's like a thought. Like, okay, what if it was different? Done. You're already gone. But you're already back. You never left. You know what I mean? So the time scale is like totally different, you know? Krishna may be able to speak on this more, but what I thought that what I might mention is that, okay, if you like philosophy, we have many books. I'm not a philosopher, right? I'm not a reader. So I haven't read them. So I can't give you any good answers. But our acharyas have a lot of nice things to say. So we study systematically, and all your answers will be answered with logic, argument, and reason, right? And Prabhupada describes that. We have many books. There's argument, there's logic, and there's reason, right? So everything is there. But if you're simple, you can just chant Hare Krishna with full faith and serve Krishna at every moment according to the simple direction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and realize everything without a doubt very quickly. Go on with the process. Give your enthusiasm, always expecting the mercy of the Lord. We have to always expect the mercy of the Lord. He will give his mercy to me if I stick with him. If I don't ditch on him, he will never ditch me, you know? So it's just a matter of time, matter of time. Krishna, did you want to add anything particularly about this? Okay.
one can go back and forth with different points on this question, this proposition, because we're using our mundane logic. And by using mundane logic, we'll never understand Krishna or the absolute truth. Like Magadari mentioned, if we hear from the acharyas, then they have the vision to show us what needs to be seen. Because, okay, you have the spiritual world, everybody's serving Krishna, everybody's happy, there's no ignorance. How can one fall down? It doesn't make sense. So, do we fall down or do we not fall down? You can go back and forth and be stuck on this point for millions and millions and millions of lifetimes. Ultimately, it's fruitless. We just have to take heed of Krishna's instructions in the Bhagavad Gita and apply it to our life. And we see, yeah, I'm suffering from lust. I'm suffering from anger. I'm suffering from greed. I'm attracted to things that I know and can see that actually don't bring me happiness. I'm attracted to this body, to this person who's only temporary, who, it's actually just blood and mucus and stool, but I'm attached, I'm attracted to the point where when I'm in front of it, I can't even think properly. So you can go back and forth, but ultimately we just have to see, yeah, I'm in a bad position. So let me apply the process, like Magadari is saying. And if you apply the process, then naturally realization will come. And realization of this question may come or it may not come. But definitely realization will come that the material world is not a nice place and anything here is not actually enjoyable. So by rendering service to Krishna, it's actually enjoyable. As a neophyte sadhana bhakta, we might go through so many ups and downs and struggles, but we should be introspective. We can look, oh, when I first came, I was thinking like this, I acted like this, my mind was going like this, and now I'm a little bit more steady, I'm fixed, but I still have many problems. And as we progressively go on, we should always analyze like this and look back at our past and where we came from and the difference between Krishna consciousness and association with the devotees and outside of the association of devotees. I mean, if you just turn on the media or TV or internet, people are crazy. Nobody has any idea of anything to do. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say is that we have the best thing here. And if we apply our full energy and focus to it, you'll get so much nectar that this question you'll actually just despise because it's a waste of time. Because our mundane logic, oh, I can't do it because I need to figure it out. It doesn't make sense. Why is this point? It just is eating away at us. But if we're just rendering devotional service enthusiastically, transcendental realization will come, nectar will come.
I want some nectar too. Yeah, that was actually one thing that I looked up with Jagannath, that enthusiasm is really the first thing. That's really the first step. Actually, no, it was in the Shikshamrita book. It says devotional service hyphen and enthusiasm. So there's a lot of letters about devotional service. And this section was from Prabhupada's letters. We were reading in 1970s. Prabhupada's letters about devotional service and the topic of enthusiasm. And he was mentioning how from this one thing, it's like it will all come. Enthusiasm to serve.
One last point. This is why we really have to study and hear and apply what we hear and really think deeply about, these points like I'm mentioning, how we're lust, anger, greed, the modes of material nature. Otherwise, there's no impetus to do devotional service. Because we don't love Krishna, so we have to see, okay, yeah, there's suffering, there's misery here. So let me apply myself with enthusiasm. And the more enthusiastic you are, then the more Krishna reciprocates with us. Krishna reciprocates according to our our surrender unto him. So if we just want to mosey on along, for years and years and years, which can stretch on for lifetimes, one can be stuck in the Nartana Vritti for lifetimes. Then you'll get a little bit of mercy. But if you really, 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 really want the mercy, to go back to God, to know that Krishna is there, to serve Krishna, he'll make everything available, provide all the intelligence, all the realizations. But we have to get on our hands and knees and cry and beg. We can't just sit there and expect, okay, I'm going to go through the process and it's going to happen. We come to the temple and we all do it together, but ultimately it's an individual thing. Krishna knows our heart.
And clean the floor. Okay, Vedanga Prabhu.
So this is a very common question of why, that Radha Damodar presented, and in addition to what's been said here, I would, in an attempt to describe it, according to my own realization, is that just like if you see someone who's the center, Srila Prabhupada once said, every living entity in the material world is envious. So what is the definition of envy? Because envy has a lot of different meanings according to the maliciousness of the consciousness. So there's different types, there's different degrees of enviousness. But basically, the original definition of envy is that you want what someone else has. So it's a desire to be like the Lord himself. So that's why we start at Lord Brahma, because the Lord is so kind that he says, okay, I will fulfill that desire for you, and put you in the post in charge of a whole universe by yourself. Because we see that this is the Lord of the universe. So that's the thought that happens in the spiritual realm that causes us, it's actually an impure desire to experience the Lord's position. And then all the problems that are manifest here, why there's so many problems, is because all the living entities from that original polluted desire comes
Hold the top.
Okay.
Hold the top of it, not the bottom.
Comes a whole world of competing living different living entities, but they're all competing with each other because they all wanted to be the Lord.
Hmm.
And so then the karma, goes from there. So that's my understanding of why the soul left the spiritual world, because even though he was very happy and enjoying in his service there, he had an impure desire to be the Lord or experience what it is like to be the Lord. So the Lord, he was merciful enough to grant that, but at the same time, he put us in a place that would reform us of that desire, because that's the way that it was set up, that he set everything up, the universe.
He's kind. Yeah. Okay, Vaishnavas, thank you very much. It was very pleasing to me to be in this Sangha with you all. And I pray to have your forgiveness for any mistakes or offenses. And I pray to also try to internalize some of these things we talked about and practice them in my devotional life. Thank